Hello and welcome back to the OddsNow YouTube channel for the latest edition of the Premier League betting show. If you're watching for the first time, well, it's me, Matt Hill, joined by my co-host, Brad Walker. And it's a very simple concept, really. Over the next half an hour or so, we're going to run through the weekend's upcoming 10 Premier League matches in quite quick-fire fashion between myself and Brad, giving you a little bit of insight about both teams and the fixture itself, and then picking out a best bet where we can from each game so that you go into the weekend suitably prepared for placing those bets, accumulators, etc. Brad, how's your weekend been before we get into the main business?
All good, mate. Yeah, we had a couple of winners last week, but room to improve, I think, in this one. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing how things pan out this weekend.
Yeah, just to look back to last week, 4 winners overall, 2 each. Made a small loss on the weekend, but boy, it was a case of what could have been, really. I was 1 yellow card away for Man United from 17 to 10 and 3 to 1 winners. And just to rub salt in the wounds, he walked over and booked somebody on the bench, and it turned out it was Eric Ten Hag. So unfortunately, that doesn't count for my bet. Brad, you had a bit of bad luck as well, didn't you, with Andres Pereira to score any time, managed to miss a penalty.
I couldn't believe that. That would have been brought in a 13-1 bet builder on OddsNow as well, which I put up for the Fulham Villa game. So, what can you say?
Yeah. When it's not your day, it's not your day. But look, we won't dwell on it. We will move on and hopefully get back to winning ways this weekend. So we actually have a Friday night game to start off this weekend. It's Leicester versus Nottingham Forest. Technically an East Midlands derby, although I must say it doesn't really rank highly on my list of derbies. But there we go. It's still a derby, so it should be an entertaining game to start the weekend. Brad, how are you seeing this one?
Yeah, we'll start with Leicester, Matt. It's an intriguing one, really. They're in buoyant form, certainly compared to their early season form when the season kicked off. They've recorded back-to-back victories in their last 2 matches for the first time this season, initially beating Bournemouth 1-0 in their last home match, and then, of course, securing that dramatic 3-2 win at Southampton last week, their relegation rivals, 2-0 down. But Jordan Ayew's stoppage time strikes secured all 3 points for them. They're now sitting pretty, pardon me, they're now sitting pretty in 14th, would you believe? I'm sure they'd have absolutely taken that heading into the 9th match day once the season had started. Forest are also in strong form. They've lost only 1 of their 8 Premier League matches so far and come into this one after a 1-0 win after Crystal Palace on Monday. Striker Chris Wood continued his positive form from last season. He's already got 5 goals in the Premier League now, of course, netting the winner in that Palace match. As you touched upon there, it is an East Midlands derby, at least geographically. Leaves this one finally poised ahead of kickoff. Steve Cooper, of course, as well, the now Leicester manager, facing his former side for the first time. It is an evenly... the odds reflect that it's going to be an even game. The odds are very evenly spread for the match, but I am ultimately going to back the away side here, Nottingham Forest. They're unbeaten in the last 6 away matches, 4 of which they've won. And only Liverpool have conceded fewer goals than them so far this season. Leicester have relieved a lot of tension and pressure on themselves with their last 2 results, but I think their winning streak will ultimately come to an end here against their rivals, Nottingham Forest. So yeah, I'm going to go Forest to win at 31-20 with Unibet. But Leicester have scored in every Premier League match so far this season. I think only Manchester City now the other side that they've been able to do that so far. So it could be worth backing Forest to win with both teams scoring. That comes in at 4-1 generally. But yeah, if I had to pick a winner here, Matt, I'd certainly go for Forest.
Then Nottingham Forest to get things started with an away win for Brad. I'm going to take, there's no lunchtime kickoff on Saturday, just FYI. First time that's happened in a while in the Premier League. So we're straight in with 3 p.m. I'm going to take Manchester City versus Southampton. And this does have the look of a very obvious result, doesn't it, really? Russell Martin, the Southampton boss, is the current favourite in the next Premier League manager to be sacked market. He's generally an even money chance, and his struggling side did not help his cause when sensationally squandering a 2-0 lead against Leicester last weekend. They looked to be cruising to victory before Ryan Fraser's red card turned the game on its head, and then a 98th minute winner for Leicester via Jordan Ayew. And I think that just summed up what has been a dreadful start to the campaign for the Saints. Despite that, Martin says he's not feeling the pressure. He, quote, had a brilliant chat with owner Dragan Šolak before that contest, and he seems to think that his job is safe. I just wonder whether Sport Republic, Southampton's owners, are looking to avoid the mistakes of the last time they went down from the top flight when they had 3 managers in the same season and it was a bit of a mess. You may remember Nathan Jones enjoying just an 8-game stint before getting sacked. And I think they do want to have that continuity with Martin, but are they almost accepting their fate and accepting relegation? There seems to be a lot of anger among the fan base, with the unwillingness to make a change. So one to keep an eye on. But I think in terms of this weekend, Russell Martin is not going to be judged on games like this. Everybody expects Southampton to lose this game. But I do think you can help your cause sometimes by losing in a better way. And that might sound a bit defeatist here, but if you go to Man City and try and play them off the park and go toe-to-toe with them, particularly when you bang out of form and really low on confidence, I think that's a recipe for disaster. However, I don't think Russell Martin knows any other way, and I fully expect Southampton to go there, try and play on the front foot, try and play possession football, and that's just not going to go well against this Man City side. And City, they haven't been firing on all cylinders this year, I think it's fair to say, especially in the Premier League, where they haven't won any of their last 5 games by more than a 1-goal margin. So they've been doing just enough, really. But I do think this game will be a different story here. A vulnerable defence that is willing to sort of put their necks on the block here and just let City sort of play their game. And this reminds me, it has the feeling of one of those Etihad afternoons where City score early and just rack up the goals, to be honest. And that's kind of how I see it going. And they did it a few times last year, didn't they? They beat Fulham 5-1, Bournemouth 6-1, Luton 5-1, and Wolves 5-1. Now, you might notice a pattern there. Although they are thrashing these kind of teams, they do always seem to concede one. And I think that's City generally, aren't they? They do have a defensive lapse in them for all their dominance. Therefore, the way I'm going to play this, as I say, I see that following a similar pattern to this one. Man City on the -3.5 goal handicap, so to win by 4 or more goals, which is aggressive, I accept, but it's how I see it going, is 19-10. So that's going to be my best bet for this one. But as I'll detail at the end of the show, I am going to have fun little stakes on a 5-1 and a 6-1 scoreline, something that City showed a penchant for last season. And they're massive prices there, 20-1 and 35-1 on those correct scores. So they're good for a little £1 interest, I think. But yeah, a comfortable City victory for me here. Brad, back over to you for Brentford take on Ipswich.
Yeah, this, believe it or not, is the first ever top flight meeting between these two clubs. We'll start with Brentford. They've started the season positively, haven't they? But they did lose to Manchester United last time out 2-1 at Old Trafford. All 3 of their wins this season, consequently, have been at home, whereas all 4 of their losses have came on the road. So I think it's fair to say that Thomas Frank's side are certainly better when they're playing on their own patch. Coupled with Ipswich's poor form, which I'm going to go through now, you can probably guess already where I'm heading in terms of the result. Kieran McKenna's side are still waiting for their first Premier League win since returning to the top flight. They've also suffered consecutive Premier League defeats as well in their last 2 games, 4-1 at West Ham, then 2-0 at home to Everton. I think it's fair to say they're up against it again against this Brentford side. Brentford have only lost 1 of their last 10 at home in the Premier League. So I am going to go for a Brentford win. That comes in at a best price of 7-10, but I do want to boost that price further. So I'm going to go and throw up a player prop. That's Brian Mbeumo, the Brentford striker who scored 5 times in his side's 4 home matches so far this season. He's also on penalty duty, enhancing the likelihood of him scoring if they were to be handed a penalty this weekend. He comes up against an Ipswich side who are conceding a shed load at the moment. They've conceded 8 goals in their last 3 matches, and as I say, that search for their first Premier League win since getting promotion is ongoing. I just can't see them getting it this weekend. So I'm going to go with Brentford to win and Brian Mbeumo to score any time. That comes in at 3-1 at Betfair. Like I said, he's in really good form, particularly in his side's home matches. He seems to love playing in front of those Brentford fans. And so, yeah, that's where I'm going to be heading for this one. Matt, like I said, we had a bit of bad luck on the player prop line with Pereira last time out. So fingers crossed that Mbeumo can do me a favour and boost my winnings this weekend.
Maybe that luck will balance out and you'll get one deflected in off his backside or something like that. We shall see, but he's certainly in good scoring form, isn't he, Brian Mbeumo? Well, we move on back to me then with Brighton, who are taking on Wolves in the next 3 p.m. kickoff. And I think on the bare form, a lot of people will just lean towards a Brighton win here, but I'm not so sure about that, and I'm going to tell you why. Wolves, just like their fellow relegation strugglers, Southampton, suffered a really late defeat last weekend, but I think they emerged from a lot more credit and will be a lot more confident off the back of that, because it was a 2-1 loss to Manchester City in injury time. John Stones coming up with a contentious late winner, which could have easily been chalked off for offside on another day. That said, the general performance from Wolves was really good, I thought. Went in front with a good goal converted by Jorgen Strand Larsen, who's made a decent start to life in the Premier League, the Scandinavian forward. And then they carried a little bit of a threat throughout on the break, but mainly they had to suck it up from Manchester City. Jose Sarr had a good game in the sticks, and I thought it was Wolves' best defensive performance for some time, actually, given the defence has been riddled with injury and constantly having to reshuffle players out of position, etc. So I think they'll take positive strides from that. I think Gary O'Neill will argue that for a few weeks now, they've not been getting the results their performances have merited. And I think this could change this weekend, of all places, where they play a Brighton team who actually come in really with their tails up. They've beaten Tottenham and Newcastle in their last two games. They've had good results against Arsenal, Manchester United. So generally speaking, Fabian Herzler will be delighted with his start to life on the South Coast. However, this does come with a word of warning for me, because against Newcastle last weekend, they were absolutely battered. Newcastle should have put 4 or 5 past them, really. Brighton scoring with their one real bit of incision on the break. It was a fantastic goal from Danny Welbeck. So well taken. He is enjoying the purplest of purple patches. But other than that, I think they were at the mercy of Newcastle, who just lacked a cutting edge. Anthony Gordon could have had a hat-trick on his own, missing a point-blank header and a couple of point-blank opportunities as well. Alexander Isak was also denied when through one-on-one. So there's definitely frailties in that back line to be exploited. And the other thing that makes me interested in the away side here is Brighton's struggles against sides at home when they play against sort of low block defensive minded sides. I think back to their 0-0 draw with Ipswich 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think back to a 2-2 draw with Nottingham Forest. In those games, Ipswich and Forest had 29 and 31% possession respectively, but they still managed to get some kind of result here. And I think all the bad luck that Wolves have kind of had, there will be a feeling in that dressing room that it's going to turn for them. We know Brighton don't like these kind of games. And then when I look at the prices and see Wolves all the way out at 9-2 for an upset, I think that's too big here. Generally, what separates the best from the very best in the Premier League is an ability to find a way to win these kind of games. But in the past, this has been where Brighton have kind of slipped up, isn't it? They'll go and beat a Tottenham, but then they maybe won't do it at home against a lower mid-table side. So I want to be with Wolves here at the prices. I think 9-2 about the upset is very chunky, and that's the way I'm playing this one. So Brad, back over to you for Aston Villa, who take on Bournemouth in the final 3 p.m. game of Saturday.
Yeah, we'll start with the host, Aston Villa. Matt, they're unbeaten in 6 Premier League matches since a 2-0 home loss to Arsenal. I think it was on match day 2. 4 of those games also ended in an Aston Villa victory, including a 3-1 win at Fulham last time out. I spoke last week at my disbelief that they were such wide underdogs heading into that game, and despite going 1-0 down, they did eventually go on to win fairly comfortably. They also picked up their 3rd win in as many Champions League games midweek versus Bologna of a 2-0 win, now remarkably sitting top of the Champions League after 3 matches played. I don't think many people would have been expecting that, particularly given Villa's so-called struggles or potential struggles to balance domestic and European commitments. I'm sure they'll be looking to continue that positive form with another win this weekend against a Bournemouth side who are also riding the wave of a big win last week. They upset Arsenal, of course, with a 2-0 victory at the Vitality Stadium in the evening kickoff on Saturday. That means now that 7 of Bournemouth's 11 points have came on home soil so far this season, but they've not fared quite as well on the road. They've lost 6 of their last 9 away matches in the Premier League. They also failed to score in their last 2 in defeats to Leicester and Liverpool. And there's no surprise, therefore, to see that they come in at 3-1 underdogs at Villa Park. I found, in terms of a betting angle, I think I found quite an interesting way of approaching this one, which is very generous, given the form of the player that I'm going to put up. And that is Aston Villa striker Ollie Watkins, a man who is more renowned for his goal scoring rather than his creativity in terms of serving up assists. But he does remarkably have 4 assists in his last 3 matches versus Bournemouth. And with that in mind, I was very surprised to see him come in at 5-1 to have over 0.5 assists in this game. So to have an assist this weekend is 5-1 Ollie Watkins, which is very, very wide, in my opinion, far too wide. And it's certainly something that I'll be looking to jump on. He also has 3 assists this season in all competitions so far. He's well rested after not starting against Bologna, although he did come on. So I think there's plenty of value there. Ollie Watkins over 0.5 assists. It's 5-1 at Ladbrokes. I certainly think that's something to keep an eye on ahead of this game.
Yeah, I like it. Ollie Watkins 5-1 to register an assist against a Bournemouth side who have looked a little bit fragile by their own standards at times this season. Although great win against Arsenal should be said last weekend. Moving on to the 5:30 kickoff, Everton taking on Fulham at Goodison Park, and this is a game between two teams who started their season in very different fashion, and then the form books have flipped for both of them in recent weeks. So when one plays well, the other one seems to be struggling. And starting with Fulham, well, they made a fantastic start to the season, didn't they? But they have come into this one off the back of back-to-back defeats, albeit to Manchester City and Aston Villa. So no need to hit the panic button too much just yet, I don't think, for Fulham. But Everton, meanwhile, well, they didn't have a single point to their name after the first 4 games. They're now on a 4-game unbeaten run, amassing 8 points in them 4 matches, which has actually lifted them not just off the bottom, but out of the relegation zone altogether. So what have we learned from those 2 runs of form for both teams? Probably not a lot, to be honest. I think Fulham are a good mid-table side, probably lacking the quality to go and challenge for a top 6 or top 7 spot. While I think Everton, they're better than relegation fodder, but not by that much, really. So given Everton are at home, that makes this game a difficult one to call, and the bookies seem to agree with me. They've basically got it each of 2, 9-5 the pair. So I'm not going to try and predict the scoreline here because I do think it's difficult. But I think one trend that we can lay our hat on is Everton's defensive improvements in the last few weeks. In their first 4 games, they shipped 13 goals. And in the next 4 games, they've shipped just 2. So Sean Dyche has gone back to basics, getting defence right first. It's what he knows best. It's what he did well with Burnley over many years. And all his success at Everton has been on the back of good defensive foundations, hasn't it? So I think Everton's first job against this lively Fulham attack will be to sort of shut them down and not give up too many chances. And if Everton were to nick a goal from a set piece or etc., they would probably look to sit back on that. I think given Fulham come in off the back of 2 defeats, their confidence may not be as high as it was a few weeks ago. And therefore, I do see this game being quite a tight, potentially not that entertaining affair, which is a shame given it's the 5:30 kickoff, and a lot of people will be hoping it is an entertaining affair. So I may be wrong, but when I looked at the unders overs lines, I was a little bit surprised to see overs the favourite there. Unders available at even money at the time of speaking with VBet. I think that's a bet for me. I could see this being a 0-0 or a 1-1 draw, and both teams being quite happy with that as a result. So that's how I see the 5:30. We move on to Sunday, where we have 4 games, starting with Brad, who's going to talk us through Crystal Palace versus Tottenham.
Yeah, Crystal Palace's dismal start continued in it with a 3rd consecutive Premier League defeat on Monday versus Nottingham Forest, as I touched upon earlier in the show. They've now failed to score in 3 of their last 4, Crystal Palace. I think it's very worrying times for Oliver Glasner and co. They picked up only 3 points in total this season and are one of the sides, still searching for their first win in the league. They are coming up against, and I think it's fair to say, an inconsistent Tottenham side, and they've won 3 of their last 5 in the Premier League, but I'm sure they're still haunted by memories of that 3-2 loss to Brighton before the international break, where of course they were 2-0 up. Nevertheless, they did rebound with a big 4-1 win versus West Ham last weekend at home, but they have struggled for clean sheets. They've only kept 1 in their last 6. That was in that, of course, the 3-0 win at Old Trafford before the international break. I think their expansive approach means that teams will get opportunities against them. And while Crystal Palace have struggled so far, they do still have quality in forward areas with the likes of Eberechi Eze, Jean-Philippe Mateta, and Eddie Nketiah, etc. I'm not saying Palace will win at all, because I don't think they will, but I do think they'll land the glove on this Tottenham side. And so I'm going to go with Tottenham to win with both teams to score. That comes in at 11-5 generally. Spurs have only lost 1 of their last 5 at Selhurst Park, but 3 of those games did see both teams find the back of the net, including last season where Tottenham won 2-1. So that's where I'll be going there. Tottenham's a win with both teams to score. Ultimately, I think Tottenham's added quality will shine through. Palace, I do think, will still be waiting or made to wait for their first win. But yeah, I do think both sides will find the back of the net. So that's the direction I'll be going for that one, Matt.
Worrying times for Crystal Palace. You thought that game against Nottingham Forest might have been a chance for them to sort of kickstart the season, and it didn't really happen. And the way it goes on for Oliver Glasner's men, Chelsea taking on Newcastle on Sunday as well. This looks like a tasty fixture, doesn't it? Particularly when you consider the achievements of the 2 teams over recent times. Newcastle probably not hit the heights that they would have hoped to so far this season, but they still possess a wealth of attacking talent, and they'll fancy their chances of going and getting something here, albeit against the Chelsea side, who are outperforming, I think it's fair to say, pre-season expectations. The last 2 years have been a little bit shambolic at Stamford Bridge, but they finally seem to be getting things in order there now. They fell to a 2-1 defeat at Anfield last weekend, but no shame in that. Obviously, we know what a fantastic start Liverpool have made. They made a game of it. Chelsea, and before that, they were enjoying a good unbeaten run. Now, at the time of speaking, they still have to go to Panathinaikos tonight in the Europa League, so that is a long journey to Greece for them, wondering if that will have any impact on this fixture. Only time will tell. Newcastle do have a rotten record at Stamford Bridge, it should be said. The last time they won here in the league was 2012 when Papi Cisse scored a brace. So that gives you a little bit of context of how long it's been since they won in West London. That said, I do expect this game to be tight, and it's a man I already referenced earlier in the video who I want to be with. Anthony Gordon, I don't know how he didn't score last time out. He should have had a hat-trick, really. Just kept passing up chance after chance after chance against Brighton. But the thing about Gordon, he just has this relentless element to his game, doesn't he, where he doesn't let things get him down. He doesn't sulk. He just gets on with it. Very direct, keeps running at his opposition defender and keeps getting himself in the right positions. And I think he's just penned a new contract at Newcastle this week, which is a massive boost for him and a massive boost for the club. We all know he's been linked with the likes of Liverpool. Does look like a player that could go on and play at the very highest level in the next few years. But he's very happy in Newcastle, seems to be enjoying his football, and I could see him celebrating that new contract with a goal in this one. He is a whopping 10-3 to score any time in this match. I think that's fantastic value for a player who is such an attacking threat and such a confident young player. So that's the way I'm going to play this one. Anthony Gordon score anytime, 10-3 with Sky Bet. Brad, just the 2 games left. Your last one is West Ham at home to Manchester United, who again are in action tonight against Fenerbahce. So at the time of speaking, we don't know how that one's gone. I know you've backed them to fall to defeat in Turkey, so we'll see how that one pans out. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, if I'm right with that, this game could have huge implications on the future of Erik ten Hag. Again, something we seem to be saying every week, but he is still in the Man United
weekly
dugout.
Erik ten Hag update there.
We'll start with their opponents first, West Ham, given that they are the home side. Their start under their own manager, Julian Lopetegui, took another hit, didn't it, last time out? I referenced it, that 4-1 loss at Tottenham. A bitter pill to swallow, I'm sure, against one of their biggest rivals, Tottenham. So they've now won just 2 of their 8 Premier League matches so far this season. They've scored in all but one of those games, though. So they do have, they are having some success on the front foot, and I'm sure that would be encouraging given the defensive record of Man United, which I'll now touch upon. I think it's fair to say Ten Hag's men have been equally as uninspiring, hence the constant talk, it seems, surrounding his future. They are unbeaten in the last 3 in all competitions, to be fair, but they've still been very mediocre. They won 2-1 versus Brentford last time out, but that is their only win in the last 6 in all competitions, 4 of which ended in a draw. Their recent record at West Ham is not convincing at all either. And West Ham have won their last 2 home matches against United, and Man United have also lost 4 of their 8 meetings versus West Ham at the London Stadium. And United have won only 2 of their last 17 matches in London. So I'm sure that's not, the most optimistic of reads if you are a Man United fan. But there's some boost can be found that Mohamed Kudus, of course, who did get sent off against Tottenham, will not be available to play this weekend, which will be a big blow for West Ham. Or will it? Because they haven't lost any of their 5 matches that he's not featured in since he signed, 2 of which they did win. The other 3, of course, ended in the draw. So make of that what you will. Ultimately, given everything I've just outlined there, I'm going to go for a West Ham win in this one. In what, if I'm right about the game with Fenerbahce tonight, like Matt said at the time of recording, they're still yet to play that game. If they lose tonight and then go and lose to West Ham, I'll be very, very surprised if Erik ten Hag is still in the Old Trafford dugout come the next international break. He needs to not just improve results, but improve performances too. And it just seemed like they're on a bit of a hide into nothing at the minute. It's almost a case of when, not if he goes. But yeah, West Ham to win this weekend comes in at 2-1 with Matchbook. I'll be very, very surprised, as I said, if he does lose this game, that Man United won't be commencing their search for a new manager shortly.
Well, we've said that before, but I do tend to agree with you. If they lose to Fenerbahce and West Ham, he's surely at the point of no return. Surely. We shall see. Arsenal take on Liverpool in a blockbuster for that final fixture of the weekend. They've definitely saved the best till last with this one. Two of the top three at the Premier League betting market clash here at the Emirates. And I think it's fair to say Arsenal, who are normally fantastic on their home turf, and to be honest, it's very rare you see them as big as 6-4 at the Emirates. But that tells a story in itself. One, that they've probably not been as convincing as they usually are in recent weeks. Obviously, it's fallen to defeat at Bournemouth. There was a red card play there with William Saliba, which obviously had a huge impact on that game. But still, I think their performances haven't been all that great, really, either. And they weren't really at it in the Champions League either. Mikel Arteta's had to come out and kind of fiercely defend his men, hasn't he, at times, and say, like, I saw him saying, we will be on it on Sunday. So he's expecting improvement here. He's clearly going to fire his players up for this one. And it is a monumental clash in the scheme of things, because Liverpool have made such a terrific start to the season, really thrown their hat into the ring in terms of the title picture. Arne Slot's men are also going well in the Champions League as well. So plenty to be optimistic about for Liverpool fans like Brad. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that Liverpool are going to win this game, because I do think it is a very tough trip to the Emirates these days. Not many people come out there with results, but I think they can travel very confident, particularly given Arsenal's absentee list, and they are really struggling in terms of available players. Obviously, Martin Odegaard has been a little bit of a long-term absentee, but Jurrien Timber is an injury doubt. Bukayo Saka almost certainly not going to feature. Arteta described him as unlikely when asked in midweek. Calafiori suffered a bad injury, of course, recently, and then you add in the suspension picked up by Saliba against Bournemouth, and it just makes for a chaotic looking Arsenal lineup. I think a lot of enforced change, which is never good in a game of this magnitude. Now, I think rather than backing Liverpool to win at 2-1, I found a bet at similar price to 2-1 for somebody to exploit that shaky, much changed Arsenal back line, and it is a familiar face in Mohamed Salah. Salah needs no introduction in terms of his goal scoring pedigree. He should have had one in midweek. Darwin Nunez nicking it off him on the line. Can't blame him, to be honest, but I think Salah wasn't best pleased at the time, to be honest. But yeah, Salah, he just carries a constant goal scoring threat, doesn't he? He'll be licking his lips against this Arsenal back line with a few key players missing, I'm sure. And the Egyptian generally enjoys playing Arsenal. In 4 of the last 5 Premier League games he started against them, he has found the back of the net. So north of 2-1 to do the same this weekend, I think that is a cracking way of playing this game. And I would just go in with a word of warning here that Mo Salah to score any time is the exact kind of bet I would expect bookies to be boosting on the day. So if you don't get that early price now, you may well get an even bigger price on the day, and I'll be certainly taking anything I can find about the Egyptian making the most of an understrength Arsenal. But I feel like it's a game that Arsenal need to do their best not to lose with all those absentees, and I think a draw would probably suit both sides here. So if I was forced to make a prediction, I'd maybe say draw, but Salah anytime will do for me. So on that note, that is all 10 games covered. We're going to just get our best bets up on the screen for anybody watching. So, as I say, Man City minus 3.5 goals at 19-10 will be my best bet there, but I am going to have just little fun stakes on the 5-1 and 6-1 at 20-1 and 35-1 respectively, just because that seems to be what City do in these kind of games on history. Wolves to win, a big upset there, 9-2 with 888 or the Betfair Exchange. You'll get similar prices, maybe even a little bit bigger. Hopefully they continue to drift. Everton, Fulham under 2.5 goals at even money. Anthony Gordon, anytime goal scorer for Newcastle at Chelsea, and Mo Salah, anytime scorer for Liverpool at the Emirates. Brad, just summering through your best bet. You've got Forest to win at just over 6-4. You've also got Forest with both teams to score at 4-1 as an extra bet. Brentford to win with Brighton and Bournemouth to score anytime is 3-1 against Ipswich. That looks a nice price. Ollie Watkins to get an assist against Bournemouth is 5-1 with Ladbrokes. Tottenham and both teams to score against Palace 11-5, and West Ham to pile more misery on Manchester United at 2-1. Brad, if I was pushing you, what would your best bet be from those, please?
Probably the Brentford one with Brian and Bournemouth to score, just because given the form of Ipswich in his own form this season, I think that's certainly a decent looking price to me.
Yeah, looks good. Looks big to me. I would probably go for Anthony Gordon any time at Stamford Bridge. I think 10-3 is just a little bit too big for a man with his attacking threat. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's Premier League betting show. If you are still watching, we really appreciate it. Please do give the video a thumb up. I'd love to hear what you're backing this weekend in the comments. We had a few comments last week, so more of that, please. Love the discussion down below. And if you haven't already, please press subscribe and you'll get all the latest OddsNow videos notified to you as soon as they come up. So thanks for watching. We'll see you again very soon.